Hey everyone, welcome to Fighting Over the Card Catalog, a snarky look back on young adult novels of the 80s and 90s, and 70s, and 60s.
And 60s, and...
I'm Jess.
19s. I guess that'd be the no, even earlier.
Oh, well, next week.
The aughts.
Yeah. Who are you?
I'm Steven, and I'm here to make my wife happy.
We're taking a journey to find out how many terrible and hopefully some not so terrible books from Steven's youth he can get me to read before I reconsider this whole marriage. Hi.
Hey, babe. How are you?
I'm so mad at myself.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
For why?
Because we should have done this week's book last week and last week's book this week. How did I not realize until I was making a folder for this episode that this was episode 42? Mm-hmm. Which should have been Hitchhiker's Guide. What the fuck? How did I not figure that out? I'm a horrible person, basically.
Well, I mean, it gives us a few seconds to talk about it on this episode.
I guess so. Which is great, because it's a much better book. Because this week we read The Stainless Steel Rat by Harry Harrison, published in 1961.
61?
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
See, I read this in the 80s. Yeah, I was probably 13 or 14, I guess. Okay, so this was part of the group of books that my uncle gave me.
Why don't you tell us about it first?
Meet James Bolivar DeGriz, con man par excellence in a universe full of suckers. He's a self-styled stainless steel rat living by his wits in the wainscoting of a ferro-concrete stainless steel civilization and leading a highly lucrative, wholly satisfying life of larceny in the midst of an almost crime-free society. But Slippery Jim slips up in the stainless steel rat, or rather gets caught in a better-than-average rat trap set by an interplanetary law enforcement agency. The Special Corps, Harold Inskip, the Corps' head man, an ex-criminal himself who knows all the tricks, persuades DeGriz to lend his talents to the forces of justice, outlining a few unpleasant alternatives. It's an offer a stainless steel rat can hardly refuse. Besides Jim actually having a great deal of respect for the Corps' humanitarian motives and modus operandi, after all they'd managed to snare him, his only concern is that Corps' basic training is so boringly basic, no one is willing to give a new guy a first-class assignment, so he gives himself one, sniffing out an ingenious plot to build an illegal space warship and tracking down a criminal whose cunning, ruthlessness, and audacity are exceeded only by her beauty. This is the 60s.
Yep. And you can tell. All right, so tell me about it.
So yeah, this was part of the books that my uncle gave me. He basically would just read books. Okay, so he was a conductor on a train.
Right.
And so he would read books a lot while he was waiting to go and while they were stopped.
Like
so
a motherfucker?
So he always had multiple paperbacks with him. And when he got done with them, he'd just stick them in a brown paper sack. So he gave me like 3 bags full.
Hell yeah.
And when I got through those, he's like, oh yeah, I've probably got 5 or 6 more bags in the garage.
Hell yeah.
So I had a built-in sci-fi little library.
Nice.
And so that's basically how I got into sci-fi and fantasy. Because that was what he enjoyed reading the most. And so that's what I had all the free books for.
Is this your mom's brother?
Yes, my mom's brother. And that's still what he does with most of his day, is he just reads.
Read.
Yeah, when he retired, he was going to play golf, but then his health wasn't that great, so...
Reading's better anyway.
He plays a little bit of golf, but yeah, he pretty much reads all day. But anyway, yeah, this book.
Yeah. How'd it hold up for you?
I mean, it was okay. I guess maybe a little bit better than I expected.
Yeah.
There was some misogyny, obviously.
Yeah.
There was a lot of smoking cigars.
Oh, yeah. It didn't bother me.
But it was still pretty fun, I guess. It was, it's weird because you can start seeing, back in the 80s, you still didn't have the internet.
Right.
And computers were just kind of they were a thing, but,
they couldn't do a shit ton.
Not a huge thing. And the fact that he got some things right and, he made some pretty good, especially for the 60s, early 60s. It was real good.
Yeah.
But he talks about loading up tapes for the programs, and they, still didn't foresee mass storage of information because they still had paper files for everything.
Right.
But there was a database that he could run queries on, kind of like internet searches. So anyway, yeah. But as a teenage boy, this was really fun because you're always basically everything you read up to the point of where you start getting outside of the school curriculum is a lot of this is how you're supposed to act, and this is how society is.
Good role models.
Yeah.
Basically. Yeah.
How you're supposed to fit in society and act within society. And this book was kind of you can be outside of the societal norms and still be somewhat ethical.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah. A raging douchebag when it comes to a woman.
Yes, very 60s mentality. And which, as an 80s male, that probably fit right in line.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that, the things I don't like about him are things that you probably enjoyed when you were that age.
Yeah.
Like that and his overwhelming ego. And basically just starting fights for no reason a lot of times. But he's also smart. Kinda. I mean, the plans he comes up with are usually good.
Yeah.
Except when he thinks he's outsmarting a woman. So, yeah, I have to give it like a 7 or 8.
Really?
I wasn't into the story. I was not into him whatsoever. So, and then I wasn't into her either. I didn't like anybody. You know?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Huh, okay.
Did you think I'd like it better?
I really didn't think about it as I was reading about how you would enjoy the story portion of it. I knew you wouldn't like the misogyny and the 60s kind of stuff, but I didn't know how you would react to the story itself. Yeah. So that's disappointing.
I'm sorry.
I give it a 1. It's my favorite book.
Are you?
I'm just playing.
Okay, Jesus. Oh, shit.
Yeah, on second reflection from last week's book, I gotta say that was probably, I said 3 or 4, but it's got to be at least a 5. I put this one at a 4. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you say this is better than Hitchhiker's Guide?
Yeah.
Is it more? Could you have more nostalgia with it?
Maybe, and maybe the movie of the Hitchhikers made it that much worse.
That's not their fault, though.
I know. It's just it puts that in your mind, though.
Oh man, you're funny. So let's get into it. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's go.
Okay. So we meet our main homie, old Slippery Jim, about to be arrested for stealing government goods and hiring these robots to remove old labels on them and substitute new ones. And then he marketed his goods in a strictly legal fashion. And this is just what he does. He does all this crime stuff because he gets a kick out of it, basically.
Yeah.
But he has, his moral code where he will not kill anybody.
Yeah, so it starts off with a robot coming through the door and telling him that he's under arrest, and then he basically explodes the floor above and makes a safe fall on the
there are
person.
a lot of explosions.
Yeah, so You really don't know that it's not a human at first, so you think he's killed somebody, but then the robot keeps talking, and you find out he's a robot. And then he makes his getaway as the whole place is surrounded.
Yeah, because he escapes into the next building, and like he loses this whole disguise that he's got, that he's had for a while, and so he's got people completely fooled. And I said here, he's a very big fan of himself. Yeah, and we learned there's like no crime in the galaxy almost, but he's part of this 1%.
Right.
A rat that can find the gaps into the stainless steel world of crime. Hence the name. So he sees himself, he's like a criminal in the eyes of society, but he sees himself as like a Robin Hood type and a protester against his laws and surveillance. And they like to, he like keeps the police in business. Otherwise, they're
right.
They're just
I think at one point he said that they should celebrate him because he makes their day more exciting.
Yeah. So I mean, that's really sweet of him.
And then he has these ethics, like he's taken this. He switches between several different cabs as he's going to the spaceport. Mm-hmm. And in the last one, he talks about, he shortchanges the driver just because he can. Uh-huh. But then he gives him a tip that more than makes up for what he shortchanged him.
He's very... It's like he's got too much time on his hands.
Right.
But he only steals from like banks and governments and large corporations, which is fine. I mean, yes, I enjoy that part of him. Absolutely. Of course I do. So he's got this new job all planned out, stealing a shitload of money from like this big department store, I think, right? That's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, they do like a money exchange or something. Like a Wells Fargo truck or something.
Yeah. And so it sounds like a pretty good plan, but not good enough to get past the Special Corps, who, I mean, they sound like Galaxy FBI guys. Like, up again, instead of like each planet's like state police. I was going to say it's more like the UN. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a pretty exciting scene of old Slippery Jim trying to escape this, but the Corps pretty much herds him into a room where Harold Peters Inskip, the top man at the Corps, is waiting for him. And he's basically just there to offer him a job, because who better to catch thieves than a thief? Apparently all the big guys in the Corps are former thieves. So old Slippery Jim pretty much has no choice but to accept, but he's like, well, he mourns the loss of his individual freedom. He says, I was losing something and I hoped I wouldn't miss it. No matter what freedom I had working with an organization, I would still be working with other people. The old carefree sole responsibility days were over. I was joining the ranks of society again. But there was the beginning of a warm feeling at the thought it would at least be the end of loneliness. Friendship would make up for what I had lost. Aww.
Yeah, sometimes when I've been alone for a while, I want to be around people and think about being part of a larger family or a big team or something. Mm-hmm. And then when I'm around a lot of people, then I'm like, I just wish I could work from home again.
But anyways, it doesn't turn out that way. Because everyone at the training school is hella boring, and his job is hella boring. He's basically in this records room where there's still all these paper records. And while he's in there, he's like reading and learning from the records, but like it's still really dull. He's mainly just like, organizing and shit.
Yeah, I can imagine him like going through all the papers and doing like basically the same thing he did when he was on planets, was like, how can I pull a heist on this? Or
how can I use this information?
Right.
Yeah. And he uses the C&M setup, the categorizer and memory. That building full of machinery that takes in and digests news and reports from all the planets in the galaxy, indexes it to every category it can possibly relate, and then files it. What? So it basically sounds like it's still one of those like room-sized computers.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds
that's
me
what they
of
had.
what I had. When I went into the Air Force in '94, there was still a room that we went into for our secure messages that was filled with these data bank computers, and we only used one of them that we made weekly backups on. But one day they brought in this little bitty cube. I don't know what to call it anyway. It was like a little computer, and they said that this little computer was taking place of every computer in the room, and it was going to have like 100 times more speed and memory capability.
Do you remember what it was?
No, it was. See,
like how much speed?
Yeah, so at the time we were using 486 computers. So that's 486,000 kilobytes, 486,000 bytes. So that's now we're using
for the whole computer.
Yeah, for the CPU. So now we're using like 3.2 billion bytes. Versus 486,000 bytes.
It's adorable.
So I was trying to explain to Aaron how many times faster the computers now are than they were, even the top of the line computers at that time.
Yeah.
This was a top of the line server, so I would say it probably was running off of a 486 CPU. Yeah.
I love it.
And it was so much faster than the others. So. They still had these remember the 5.5-inch floppy disks?
The ones that were actually floppy.
Yeah. So they had like 12-inch floppy disks.
Wow.
Yeah, they were floppy disks with the big thing on the inside, but they were like 12 inches square.
Wow.
As well as the tape reels that you put on, and you go back and forth, spin up, and anyway. So that's what I kind of imagine this machine as being.
I see it as what comes in to replace Katharine Hepburn and all her friends.
That's exactly what I thought you were going to say.
The Spencer Tracy Katharine Hepburn
and they
movie.
Feed in the tapes to
and it's taking
query.
over their jobs at the reference library. And yes, it's one of my favorite movies. And I like to watch it in...
Which movie was it?
Desk Set.
I
like to watch it in December because Katharine and all her friends there get like hella drunk at the office party for Christmas, and it's just so good.
And that was with Katharine and her
Spencer Tracy. Yeah.
Her married beau.
Yes. Oh, we could get into a whole thing, but I will refrain. But look up Death Set. It was on Netflix last year. I'm not sure if it's still on there, but it might be. Anyway. So he has this C&M running, looking through spaceships, because that's fun. And he finds these plans for this giant warlord battleship that hasn't been around in forever. But this looks like new stuff being built. And so we learned all this from him telling Inskip in the middle of the night because he broke into his room because, remember, he's just been very bored. And old Slippery Jim convinces him that this is happening right now, this thing's being built, and that he himself is the man to go on a recon mission to Citanuvo. I can't do planet names, apparently. Citanuvo? We'll say that. Where it's being built. That's a planet. So Inskip lets him do that, at least. And so he goes off with this core robot butler thing. And he fools everyone on Citanuvo that he's this rich motherfucker. And then that he's an admiral in the League Grand Fleet, and he gets into the president's study, president of this planet, that I'm not going to say again, and finds all this, like, typical political corruption, paperwork, shit, and then the president comes in and he's like, oh, no, I'm totally innocent about the battleship. He's not denying all this other stuff. And
he's like, there's an explanation for everything.
Yeah. ghosts. But the Robo Butler dude's hands, he's basically like a giant lie detector. And so we find out he actually is innocent about the battleship stuff. And so they all head over to the space yards where it's being built. But they discover too late that this ship has already left. Because of course it has. So old Slippery Jim and some clerks find out what's really up by combing through all this, of course, paperwork.
Yeah.
There's so much paperwork.
Yeah, so like, come to find out, like, the people who had to approve the plan changes and stuff, their secretary would all of a sudden get sick.
Right, yeah. Hold on, I've got that.
And then one person would... Yeah, okay, go.
Well, I have this quote. Bit by bit, a pattern started to emerge, a delicate webwork of forgery, bribery, chicanery, and falsehood. Dog, I love the word chicanery so much. And he says it could only have been conceived by a mind as brilliantly crooked as my own. I chewed my lip with jealousy, like all great ideas. This one was basically simple. So yeah, all the orders to get this ship built were like originated in many different places, like departments and stuff, and then passed on and changed and shuffled around by this mastermind named Pepe Nero, who like installed himself as like just this run-of-the-mill assistant engineering designer. And then he had his secretary named Angelina, who would fill in other departments when their secretaries conveniently got food poisoning. Dun, dun. So, Pepe and Angelica are up on this battleship attacking Navy ships for gas and supplies and murdering sailors on them. So, old Slippery Jim's like, hey, I gotta do something about this. Because remember, that bit's against his morals. So, he puts out this press release basically saying, oh, billionaire to found own world. Space yacht filled with luxuries to last 100 years. And of course that billionaire will be old Slippery Jim himself. They pick up the space yacht, as you do, and this is all a trap to get Pepe's attention. And it works, because the battleship docks right up alongside the yacht, and through some trickeration, old Slippery Jim sneaks onto their ship with his gun drawn.
When they come up, they like do some magnetic lock on him to to get the ship next to him, and he, or is it the other way around? They're there, and then he puts a magnetic lock on
so
them.
They can't get. Yeah,
and then tells them that he has all of these bombs attached to his ship, and if they try to do anything, then he's just going to blow it up and blow them all up. So
it's fine.
While they're worried about this and talking to him, he had all the plans from the ship, so he already knows a way to get into the ship and to the main control room. And so he walks in, and they're talking to him over the two-way radio. Yeah. Using two-way radios in space.
That was pretty good. So they think he's still back in his, like, control room. Yeah? Is that what it would be? Yeah, okay.
And so anyway, he's
like, bam, motherfuckers.
Yeah. And then it's the secretary and this Pepe.
Yeah. And there's a lot of fat shaming going on with poor Pepe here. Mm. He was calling him chunky and whatnot. But don't you worry, because old Slippery Jim reassures us that Angelina, I told you I was doing that, is young, dark, and beautiful. No, we're not bringing them into this. Yeah, so Angelina, she starts crying and proclaiming her innocence, and old Slippery Jim's like, whatever, I'm taking this guy in. And Pepe, like, starts shaking, and old Slippery Jim's like, oh, he's crying. But turns out he's actually laughing, because Angelica has slipped away, and Pepe says she was the actual mastermind. What?
Imagine that, a female.
Brains and beauty. Oh, I never. Oh, my goodness. So she totes gets away by stealing another ship and killing the 12 crew members on that. I mean, this bitch is hardcore, but also beautiful. Don't forget. Oh my goodness, thank God. So old Slippery Jim's apparently has done a good enough job bringing in the ship and Pepe, but even though Inskip tells him not to, he really has this need to go after Angelina. He says it has to do with guilt for letting her get away, but I think it's just because a woman outsmarted him.
Right.
And so that's playing on his ego.
Yeah, so he steals a ship and is...
from the core.
From the core.
And he says, well, this is effectively my resignation.
He makes sure there's no bugs in it, and then, or I guess GPS, whatever, what they call that at the time.
Any sort of tracking device is what I was going to say.
And then there's a bomb that's built into every ship.
Because of course.
In case they need to self-destruct it or something. And so he decides he's going to take that off, and as soon as he takes it off, it explodes. Like actually, it was like the charge that makes the bomb explode. And so he thinks that they just tried to kill him. So he's like, oh, well, shit. I guess you guys know that I'm out of here. And you tried to kill me.
Yep. But it's fine. Because he figures out which planet Angelina's on.
And Peggy.
No. And he does this whole big bank robbery thing to get money to start a new character for himself. And then he goes to a bar. And a tart approaches him. And he takes about 5 minutes getting all horny looking at her before realizing, oh shit, that's Angelina, who has also changed her appearance. And he's impressed with that. So they head to her place, and he's thinking he's so hella smart figuring this out. He's like turning himself on, even. Like, he's just, I mean, it's a long walk, and he's just pumping himself up. They get there, and he closes the door. She pulls a gun on him because she's not as dumb as you think she is, my dude. She knew all the time it was old Slippery Jim. And so she shoots him 4 times in the heart and 1 right between the eyes. The end. Hey, if you've been enjoying our show, please share it, tweet it, tell your friends and enemies. Word of mouth is the best way for podcasts to grow, and we would just really appreciate it. I know if you're listening, you probably have some bookworm friends from back in the day who would love to reminisce with us. Please consider rating us on Apple Podcasts and subscribing there, or at any of your favorite podcast places of choice. Come hang out with us on Facebook, Instagram, Tumblr, YouTube, Pinterest, all at Fighting Over the Card Catalog, and on Twitter at Card Catalog Pod, and me, personally, at Just Digress. And last but not least, check out our website where you can find all the things I just mentioned.
Except...
Not really.
It was a 75, what they called a 75 recoilless.
Uh-huh.
I can't imagine any type of bulletproof vest that would stop that.
Right?
But here they have.
Don't know. Well, how he survived for the headshot is because somehow he got his arm up in front.
Yeah. And it deflected it, and it just hit him in the...
It hit him in the arm, yeah.
Hit him in the temple, and...
Yeah.
I guess knocked him out, but he was still...
Yes. He did. He was knocked unconscious.
Yeah.
Because he wakes up in an ambulance. And they take him to this hospital and fix him up some. And then this robot is like moving his bed around, taking him to a room, I guess. And he fakes the doctor's handwriting on his chart. Jim, not the robot. To say that, oh no, he had actually died. So he ends up in the morgue and gets shut in this huge freezer with all these dead bodies, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But it's fine because he's able to steal some much needed clothing because he's very cold.
Except for the left boot, because they had used the left foot of all of them.
Right, to put the toe tags on. Yeah. But it's cool. Because he switches them all around, including his. So, it's all going to be mixed up. So when they find a body missing, well, everything's fucked up. So they keep it to themselves. And he walks right on out of there. So he spends a few days back at his hotel, recuperating, because he did get shot. And congratulating himself. And obsessing over Angelina. I know, like, it's to be taken ironically, but the way he calls Angelina his darling and his sweetheart, and it's just gross. So he learns about this doctor dude who lost his license for accidentally killing a politician during surgery because he was going through alcohol withdrawals, essentially. Right. And he pays him to do, like, complete plastic surgery on him to start this new character. They go to this house out in the middle.
Like, changed his height.
Yeah.
Changed facial structures.
Yeah, they go out to this house in the middle of nowhere, and, like, for weeks he's doing these surgeries. Yeah, on his hands, face, skull, ears, femurs to alter his height and walk, and even his vocal cords. Also, he can go out and hunt Angelina down. I skipped all the part with the doctor's girlfriend. It wasn't necessary.
All right.
Yeah. Unless you think it is.
Okay. Don't think it is.
It's just another douchey man.
Yeah. Basically, it was... James said he'd give him all this money, but he couldn't tell his girlfriend, and he said, forget her. I'm leaving as soon as you give me the money. And yeah. So afterwards, of course, then James says that he's given the other half of the payment to her, right, basically.
Because of his morals. And
if you don't leave the planet right now, then, you know, the police have been notified, so you're going to get stuck here and go to jail.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess it is important then, you know, to show you, you know, it's not just not killing people.
Right.
He does have some morals for people getting hurt. So then he spends weeks doing everything.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out where Angelina is, but to no avail. He said, I was feeling, not thinking, and my anger at her escape cracked the lid off my more civilized impulses. I choked a pillow to death, imagining it was her neck, and finally shouted, crazy, crazy, that's her trouble, all the way around the bend and dotty as polka dots. When I fell onto the bed, everything swooped around and around in sickening circles, and I mumbled, just plain crazy. I would have to be crazy myself to figure out which way she will jump next. Yikes, my dude. But he takes this very seriously and decides he basically has to get in her mind by making himself become crazy with the use of this, like, mix of drugs.
Yeah, so at this time frame... So he was talking about in this time period, you can reproduce every single... narcosis or mental issue chemically, and so he makes a cocktail with all these different.
It's very weird. Yeah, and he injects himself with it once he believes he has the right mix. I don't know. And then he falls asleep, and he wakes up. And he starts looking at himself in the mirror and basically turns himself on again. Yeah, looking at this new handsome face that the good doctor gave.
This face fits me better than the last one.
He says that he needs some food and some drink and a quiet place to think.
So, of course, he goes to a bar.
Yeah. He says a nearby spot provided all three. After I had chased the hookers away. They were all dogs. And Angelina just playing a role had been better than this entire crowd lumped together. Angelina. She was on my mind tonight with a vengeance. The drinks warmed my gut and Angelina warmed my memory. To think that I had actually once considered turning her in or possibly killing her. What a waste. The only intelligent woman I had ever run across. And all woman, I'll never forget the way she walked in that dress. Once she had been tamed a bit, what a team we would make. This thought was so mentally aphrodisiac that my skin burned and I drained my glass in a single swallow. Something had to be done. I had to find her. She would never have left a ripe plum of a planet like this one. And a girl with her ambition could go right to the top here. Nothing could stop her. And that's, of course, where she would be, even if not now. She must spend her life feeling damned because she was a woman, knowing she was better than the rest of the cruds around, then proving it to herself and them over and over again. My arrival would be the biggest favor Angelina could have. I didn't have to prove myself better than the Hicks on this rubified planet. Just one look did that. When Angelina hooked up with me, she could stop fighting, relax, and take orders. The contest would be over for all time. So I pretty much hate you, old Slippery Jim, no matter your ethics.
Well, again, this is his altered ego. This is not how he normally thinks. This is how he chemically altered himself.
Oh, I still think he believes this way. I mean, thinks this way in his regular. So he gets himself all kitted out as royalty to attend this ball.
Well, you skipped first.
I probably did. The fight with the barman.
Yeah, so he got in a fight with a barman and, like, broke his arm because he broke the barman's arm because he shortchanged him. Mm-hmm. And then he has this thought in the back of his mind that, oh yeah, the chemicals are running out. I gotta get back and take some more because I don't want this to end. You know, that this is how I should have been all the time. So his altered self was going to try to keep... And he
hasn't found Angelina yet.
Was going to try to keep himself altered. And so anyway, he had basically rigged something so that when he did something, when his altered self did something that he knew that his unaltered self knew he was going to do, it knocked him out long enough that the chemical wore off. And
he picked up his gun, and when he did that, like a gas bomb, something, it went off.
Right. And so then he remembered everything from his altered state, but he wasn't that way again. And he remembered the thought of she's still here on this planet, and she's, going to try to work her way to the top.
Mm-hmm. So he's like, hey, I need to go see the king. And he goes and crashes this party. Basically. He's like fucking Cinderella all of a sudden. He's like,
so
new disguise, and he's royalty himself.
He decided that she would try to work her way to the top, but she wouldn't actually do it with the person that was already at the top. She would do it through somebody else who would probably try to take over.
Right, a mastermind himself. So he gets there to this ball, and all the women were subjected to my very close scrutiny, and most of them enjoyed it because, if I say so myself, with my new face and the fit of the uniform I cut a mean swath through the local types. He's so conceited. So, okay, now he gets into a fight. Interested. Because it's this whole thing with the king, and he spills wine on him, and it's like this whole mess. But this is the whole point, because he's doing it for the publicity. Because he wants this to get into the papers and shit. And
he basically lays hands on the king, and then he starts yelling about people who took away his family's titles, and and then a whole bunch of people start coming and pulling him off and fighting, and he ends up punching a lot of people, and then eventually he gets knocked out himself because there's just a whole lot of people.
Like you do.
And then he wakes up in jail.
Mm-hmm. But he's totally fine with it because this was the whole point. Yeah, he wants Angelina to hear this because he figures she needs allies and aid from the nobility. So he's in prison for about a week. And a bunch of dude bros break him out and take him to this count guy who turns out to be the cousin of the king, but they don't get along.
He's the country cousin.
Yeah. The king has, like, all sorts of money and shit, of course, by being part of the League, whatever. I forget the rest of the name.
United Nations.
The United Nations.
The United Planets, I guess it would be.
Yeah. While the Count's out here, he has to live with a coal-powered robot. Old Slippery Jim is like, he keeps expecting to see Angelina, you know, thinking she's behind all this. He's like, oh, she's the one who had me broken out of jail. But he never sees her. And he learns the Count used to be married, but apparently something bad happened. And he's like, okay, I know this has to be Angelina. She's the only one who could be behind it. And then finally one day the Count takes him deep into the castle. And oh, there is Angelina. She's changed her appearance a bit as well. But don't worry, y'all. She still has a smoking hot body, if not better. He calls her Angelicious, and I want to die. I can't. So she proposes that he be her bodyguard, because the former queen's family believes that although her death, not queen, the countess, I guess. Yeah. Believes that her death was called a suicide, but they all believe that Angelina actually killed her. And so old Slippery Jim asks her if she did, and she's like, oh yeah, totes, I did. Then he calls her Angeligant. Boy, you need to stop. So, okay, did you enjoy all this sort of Angelicious, Angeligant?
It didn't even register.
No?
No.
I mean, as a kid.
I don't remember.
Okay.
I wouldn't.
Okay. Okay. I didn't mean now, because I hope. Okay. Well, it didn't register, though.
Didn't register.
And you were listening to it.
Yeah, I mean, but I was also doing things as I was. So, yeah, I was paying attention more to the general story than the words being used.
Okay. So, anyway, they're planning this whole revolution, I guess. And one night it seems like the Count tries to rape Angelina because, you know, and old Slippery Jim rushes in, you know, since he is her bodyguard. But she takes care of him herself and, like, whacks him over the head. And he's all knocked out. The Count, not Jim. And she's like, don't worry about it. How about we keep him out in front until we're done with him, and then you and I take over this revolution together on our own. And he's like, fuck yeah! And then he kisses her. And she's like real into it for a minute. But then all of a sudden she's not. And she's like, you just want the pretty face. Would you kiss this? And opens the locket, but closes it before he can get a really good look. But back in his room, after she kicked him out, he thinks about what he saw. The picture he saw in it. A tragic thing. One of those horrible proofs of the law of chance that an almost infinite number of combinations are possible. Like in Hitchhiker's Galaxy. The girl was cursed with ugliness. That is the only way to describe it. It was no single factor of a bent back, adenoidal jaw, or protruding nose. Instead, it was a damning combination of traits that combined to form a single repellent whole. I didn't like it. But what did it matter? 'Cause it was Angelina! So this is really long, this next bit, but I felt it was important.
Okay.
With this realization, so many other things became clear. Many times when looking at her, I'd wondered why that deadly mind could be housed in such an attractive package. The answer was clearly that I wasn't looking at the original package that had shaped the mind. To be a man and to be ugly is bad enough. What must it feel like to be a woman? How do you live when mirrors are your enemies and people turn away rather than look at you? How do you bear life when at the same time you are blessed or cursed with a keen and intelligent mind that sees and is aware of everything, makes the inescapable conclusions and misses not the slightest hint of repulsion? Some girls might commit suicide, but not Angelina. I could guess what she had done, hating herself, loathing and detesting her world, and the people on it. She would have had no compunction about committing a crime to gain the money she wanted. Money for an operation to correct one of those imperfections. The more money, the more operations. Then someone who dared to stop her in this task, and the ease and perhaps pleasure with which she killed him. The slow upward climb to crime and murder to beauty. And during the climb, the wonderful brain that had been housed in the ill-formed flesh had been warped and changed. Poor Angelina. I could be sorry for her without forgetting the ones she had killed. Poor, tragic, alone girl who, in winning half the battle, had lost the other half. Purchased skill had shaped the body into a lovely, truthfully, and angelic form. Yet in succeeding, the strength of the mind that had accomplished all this had been deformed until it had been made as ugly as the body had been in the beginning. Yet if you could change a body, couldn't you change a mind? Could something be done for her?
If she was still ugly, he wouldn't care.
He wouldn't give a shit. Okay, I mean, because it was written in 1961, was that all to be taken seriously, or is that like an ironic look at, like, you know, like this dashing playboy, egocentric, conceited motherfucker?
No, I think it's more of that was a prevailing thought at the time.
Right.
That is not.
That's what I was afraid of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that's probably more along the lines.
Yeah. That's disappointing.
Yeah.
I had some small hope that he was a bit redeemable in an ironic sense.
Right.
But no.
No, I think it was probably an author from the 60s who grew up in the 40s.
Right.
Who was trying to think of a reason why this beautiful person had such an ugly mind.
Right. Right.
And trying to justify it some way.
Mm-hmm. Because if you're ugly, you have to turn ugly yourself. I mean, your soul.
Right.
Right.
Or that you have a lot of negative interactions in your life. And,
right.
And through that, yeah.
Right. He's so upset by this that he goes out on the roof for some fresh air. But he looks down and he sees an assassin on Angelina's balcony. And so he jumps down on top of him and they have this like silent tussle. And Jim scratches the guy with his own knife. And then he like quickly dies. And Jim's like, what the fuck? But it's because the knife had poison on it. So he opens up the window into Angelica's room. And she acts like she didn't know that fight was happening out there. But she toasted. And then he, like, starts yelling at her that the past lives only in her head and throws the locket out the window. And then they bone down hard. Basically. So the next morning, he brings the body of the assassin to the Count. And he dismisses everyone else and says, hey, let's you and me lock up that foreign woman and we take over this revolution business ourselves. Yeah. And old Slippery Jim's like, I don't trust you, but, like, because the Count is not a beautiful woman, you know, so he just plays along, and then goes right to the beautiful woman. And it turns out she basically knows everything, because of course she does, including that he's old Slippery Jim from back on the other planet, or place, when she shot him. She just doesn't know his name. And she knows that he knows she's her. And then the phone rings and, oh shit, there are a bunch of ships landing. And she accuses him of turning her in. And he denies it because he actually didn't. But Inskip busts in with some other dudes and they handcuff her and take her away. Oh, Jim is still part of the Corps and now a full-on agent. He got a fucking promotion for stealing this ship.
Right. And got to find out they didn't actually try to blow him up. It was just rigged to, when it was disconnected, to blow a few seconds later.
Mm-hmm. And then they knew where he was this entire time because they had installed a tracker device onto him way back.
It just wasn't turned on when he was trying to detect it. They waited until he had enough time to get where he was going, and then they turned it on.
Yeah. So not shady at all. So they talk about Angelina, or actually, as we have learned, her real name is Angela. And they're like, yo, if we can knock that crazy out of her, she'd be a great agent. Huzzah! Huh. And they drink up and say, here's to crime. Now it's the actual end.
Which, in future books, spoiler alert.
It's fine.
They do alter her mind.
Uh-huh.
And she is still like shady and criminal like, but she's more along the lines of Jim.
Sure. She doesn't want to kill people.
Yeah, she doesn't kill people anymore, and yeah, has some empathy.
So she's like a cool criminal.
In like future books, they actually have a family.
Because there are 12 of them.
Yeah, they actually have a family together, and they have.
Oh. Do they have shady kids?
Yeah, they have shady kids.
Nice. I bet you like that as a kid, huh?
Yeah.
So, what are you reading?
Let's see. I finished the catalog of shipwreck books. It was good. I mean, it talks a lot of history about Columbus, because to understand the guy who, I forgot his name now.
But the prince guy.
No, right? No. He served for a prince.
Oh, right,
in the household.
Right.
Yeah. And then he ended up dying, and he went to be in the Queen's household for a while. So anyway, but being around that, he learned to catalog things, and then his own self. There was a lot that happened. Mainly, his brother was after Columbus died, his brother was the head of the house, and everything was left to his older brother, and his older brother kept getting in trouble, legal troubles. So he himself would go to different places like Rome, where he was in trouble with the Pope, and would spend like years there as he was helping his brother get through these
trials.
Trials. Yeah, basically. And while he was in these different places, he would accumulate more books.
Hell yeah.
And catalog them. And actually, I said he had like a library of like 4,000 books. Well, his actual library was around 20,000 books. And that was even before that, not counting the ones that he left somewhere and had left a friend to, or I guess an employee, to pack up all the books, and all of these other books that he had collected, and ship them back while there was a shipwreck.
Oh no!
And he had already cataloged all the books in his catalogs.
Oh no!
So he had to go back through those.
Take those out. Oh no!
And he took them out and he put them into its own catalog of shipwreck books.
Got you.
Yeah. So there was one talking about
how
that. When
time consuming.
When he died, he left money and instructions on taking care of the library to his nephew, who had no interest in doing anything with the books whatsoever. So there are only 4,000 books remaining out of the 20,000 that he had when he died.
Wow. Little dick.
Yeah. And they eventually it was given to other collections, and they didn't do anything with them. And then it was only hundreds of years later that people started seeing the value in some of these things these books that were not the most famous books that he was collecting, and these pamphlets that showed what was happening in everyday life, a catalog of the ordinary person in that time. Anyway, I thought it was very interesting. So finish that one.
I'm leaving all my books to my niece, but she's a little nerd and she will appreciate and take care of them.
I am currently reading Foundling by D.M. Cornish. Almost finished with that. It's been pretty good. I hope there's some more of those because I'll read them if there are. And then just got Caliban's War, which is the Leviathan, the Expanse series, book 2. So I'll probably listen to that this week.
Okay. I haven't been reading at night at all.
Yeah.
So I got nothing.
Oh.
Yeah.
No, none of that newfangled Harry Potter?
And that newfangled Harry Potter kid.
Okay.
Not this week.
I actually started 2 other books and listened to I guess I listened to 3 other books. One I listened for about 5 minutes.
Ouch.
That was enough. The other one was about 5 minutes. That was enough. And then the other one I probably listened to an hour to an hour and a half. I'm like, okay, I don't really care.
Aw, you tried to stick it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of what I did with this one. But I read it. I did finish it right before we started recording.
Ah.
I mean, it was the second half of the soccer game we were watching when I finished. Yeah, it was rough. So, I mean,
yeah,
I understand. I know. And I was like, well, this one's so much longer. Nope, it's about the same length as a Babysitter's Club book. So, yep. Okay, so, see, happy birthday. This is your fucking present.
And next week's, I have no idea.
Yeah, we don't know what's happening with next week's. Next week's book
was a young adult book that was written in 1909.
The Dare Boys of 1776. Yeah, and we know nothing about it.
Yeah.
And there is no audiobook.
And there's no audio.
So we should probably get to reading that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
So thanks so much for listening, everybody.
Yep.
I hope you enjoyed one of Steven's picks, because I didn't.
I hope you enjoyed hearing her discuss.
We're rereading the books of your childhood.
So you don't have to.
Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.